Imagine a world where anything you can think of can become a reality. A watermelon pie? We got it. A cactus ghost? Got it. Hunter S. Thompson as a president? We got that too. For the last week, I've been obsessed with an AI image generator called Midjourney. You put in a prompt like the perfect cloud, and it spits out some results. Sometimes they're terrible, sometimes they're bizarrely terrifying, but just as many times they're incredible. Here's a movie camera by Pablo Picasso, Infinite Cabbage, a bathroom designed by MC Escher, a person made entirely out of cheese, deluxe beans, a strip mall painted by Monet, Dune directed by Wes Anderson, a bubblegum farm, family dinner painted by David Lynch, chicken nuggets at a Michelin star restaurant, cotton candy grapes, Twin Peaks drawn by a child, a potted tongue plant, pills by Gucci. I've spent hours now surfing through what is essentially humanity's collective imagination, remixed by my own random ideas and a powerful AI. It's addicting and fascinating. Every image is a gamble. You don't know if it's going to spit out something amazing or just a pile of trash. What about a pile of trash by Van Gogh? But it's as terrifying as it is fascinating. As this technology improves, which it is already, DALL-E 2, Google's own image generation AI that isn't available for the public yet, is already much stronger than Midjourney, which I've been using. What will it mean for art, images, imagination? What is a world where anything we can imagine can become a reality? How does encountering this world make you feel? What if we put everything on a bagel?
Everything. All my hopes and dreams, my old report cards, every breed of dog, every last personal ad on Craigslist. Sesame, poppy seed, salt.
There's a new feeling I've started encountering in recent years. It's hard to describe. It's kind of uncomfortable, fractal, overwhelming, disorienting, but at the same time enticing and kind of awe-inspiring. For a while, I didn't know where this feeling was coming from, what was causing it, or how many other people might be feeling what I was feeling. But then in 2021, I started noticing a few artists depicting the feeling that I was having. Burnham was the first to put his finger on it with his comedy special, Inside.
There it is again, that funny feeling, that funny feeling.
But another recent work which captures the feeling in an even more fundamental way is the hypermodern, maximalist, everything, everywhere, all at once.
You underestimate how the smallest decisions can compound into significant differences over a lifetime. Every tiny decision creates another branching universe. Were you not paying attention before?
It's easy to get bogged down in the technical elements of multiverses and how they work either as a storytelling device or as an actual theory for our own cosmos. But what I'm most interested in about the multiverse as it's used in Everything Everywhere All at Once is as a metaphor for our own world and our own personal experience, especially as a metaphor for the experience of I love the internet. I've always loved learning about new and novel things and have had an insatiable curiosity. And for someone who could spend all their time exploring what's out there if they didn't have to do other things like eat, pay rent, and socialize, the internet has been an endless garden of delight and possibility. The internet has an inexhaustible variety of cool stuff and tons of fascinating people and ideas to discover. The internet is why I get to do something like this as a job. But it's a double-edged sword.
I thought I was disconnected. Why was I still there?
Your mind is like a clay pot holding water. Every jump opens another crack, constant things to leak through.
Even when pointed at seemingly productive learning and not just mindless entertainment, when given the option to fulfill endless curiosity, there comes a tipping point, a crossing of the bell curve.
Sucked into a bagel.
Here's the thing. We don't need an actual multiverse to put cracks in the clay pot of our mind when we already have devices for careening through the endless imaginations of the multitudes. When we exist in an environment where you can encounter the personal stories and experiences from people on every continent, all who are living their own unique life in just a few minutes, all from the comfort of your own toilet. When more interesting ideas, concepts, people, and places can fly by in the space of one 30-minute TikTok binge than some of our ancestors experienced in the entirety of their localized illiterate lives. The internet, for those who are inspired to spend a lot of time on it and use it in a certain way, for those who envelop themselves in its self-referential world of constantly evolving novelty and imagery, will inevitably have a profound effect on the way you see the world. What is the result of this headlong dive through novel ideas and imagery? Many astronauts, upon seeing the Earth for the first time from space, spinning by below them, report something that has been dubbed the overview effect. When they see the world they've always known from such a radically different viewpoint, flying by in its entirety in the space of 90 minutes, hundreds or thousands of times, it can cause a significant paradigm shift in how they view life and the world. I don't think the effect of being very online is the same thing as the overview effect that astronauts experience, but I think there's a lighter weight analogous effect that can happen from consuming the amount of information that many of us now do using the internet. Seeing so much of the world so quickly can trigger a sort of psychological paradigm shift. The shift isn't coming from being exposed to a single new idea or perspective that forces you to reassess your own. The shift comes from the sheer amount of perspectives and ideas that we can now be exposed to online. The shift from being online all the time contains some positives, but it can also leave you stuck in a state of overwhelm, constantly considering alternative life paths, constantly comparing your own experience to the experience of others, unable to hold a consistent view of what's real or what is important. For most people, I think the digital overview effect is a gradual and pervasive accumulation, slowly building up as we swim through a world of thoughts, ideas, concepts, and emotions, all projected at us through images, text, and video, one after another in an endless parade. Each new idea can pull you in a different direction, and there's a certain point, if you go far enough and fast enough, where everything, the infinite possibility of life, starts to blur by and look and feel like nothing. And at that point, the entire thing collapses on itself.
What is the truth?
Nothing matters.
For me, Everything Everywhere All at Once is one of the first true post-internet films. It's not just about the internet, it doesn't just comment on the internet, but fully embraces it in all of its absurdist, chaotic glory. The maximalist excess and complete tonal whiplash from one moment to the next captures the unhinged, unfiltered anarchy of using the internet in a way that nothing else I've ever consumed has.
She appears to be in a universe where everyone has hot dogs instead of fingers.
This is a movie for people who have found themselves blinking sleep out of their eyes with 50 tabs open at 2 a.m., which I suspect is many more of us than we'd openly care to admit. In an interview with Slashfilm, Daniel Scheinert, one of the movie's directors, said, "We've talked a lot about what it's like to have grown up on the internet and how that exacerbated the typical generational divide and what it feels like for everyone, no matter how old you are, to live right now with the internet." So that's one of the key metaphors, was just like, we wanted the maximalism of the movie to connect with what it's like to scroll through an infinite amount of stuff, which is something we're all doing too much. Most media that tries to comment on the internet comments on the content of the internet, or one small aspect of it that it wants to critique. But it doesn't comment on the message that comes from the medium of the internet, the feeling of the experience of the internet, the way the most absurd or inane things you've ever seen coexist in the immediate context of tragedy and posts from your friends and family. Everything Everywhere All at Once does comment on this experience. It's silly and stupid and chaotic because, well,
Welcome to the internet. Have a look around. Anything that brain of yours can think of can be found.
Jobu Tupaki is a child of the internet, raised in and by the chaos of the multiverse, cast unknowingly by her parents without training wheels into the void. She doesn't have the skills to cope with that experience, and neither do many of the real teenagers who are growing up on the internet now. Evelyn, her mother, first tries to resist this experience and then tries to understand, but eventually realizes that she too is not equipped to handle the onslaught of experiencing the internet head on. How do we handle this situation? How do we stare head on to the darkness of the bagel and survive? Maybe you haven't experienced what I'm talking about. Maybe you don't know what I mean. Maybe you've ventured into this brave new world and have come out relatively unscathed. But even if you haven't been negatively affected by it, I would argue that you probably are impacted by it in some way. Our world is being shaped right now by people who have gone in and haven't come out unscathed. And while my parents' generation and my generation still got to grow up with the internet as a thing that we go to and then can go away from, the current generation is living with it as an omnipresent extension of themselves. They're growing up in a technological world increasingly dominated by the internet. Their education, their social lives, and their careers are intertwined with this experience. And it increasingly takes a particularly bold and defiant individual to even take a step back from this world. And it's not slowing down. While the adults in power are just now noticing the issues that reared their heads almost a decade ago, the next decade holds a whole new set of wonders and terrors that we're waiting to embrace with open arms. It might sound from all of this like I feel like it's a hopeless situation, but I don't feel hopeless, and I don't think Everything Everywhere All at Once does either. The film ultimately affirms a quiet acceptance of a life that openly acknowledges the infinite chaos and possibility swirling around us vying for our attention, but chooses to quietly ignore it in order to value what's immediately in front of you.
No matter what, I still want to be here with you.
And I think one of the points that the movie tries to make is that in order to engage with the multiverse of the internet in a healthier way, you have to understand what doesn't matter to you. Because attention is the economy of the internet, and we pay attention to things we see as important. So the entire engine of the internet is built to convince you that everything matters all at once, all the time. But in the real world, in the world you're living in, you can only pay attention to a few things in one place at a time.
I'm just gonna ignore everything else.
And in order to pay attention to the few things that do matter, you have to look at a world of infinite possibility out there and boldly proclaim that it doesn't matter. And that's not to say that nothing on the internet or that you find on the internet matters. But the point is, it can't all matter equally to you. If you try to act like it all matters equally to you, you'll end up feeling like none of it matters. There's a quote from Marshall McLuhan that gives me hope when I'm thinking about these kinds of issues, and so I'll leave you with that. There is no inevitability so long as there is a willingness to contemplate what is happening. Imagine a world in the multiverse where nobody shaved. It probably wouldn't look like that Midjourney image, but I might find it nice. I've never really enjoyed shaving, and a big part of that is because I've never found a razor that meets all of the specific wants that I have. I've never liked how the standard cartridge razors that you get from most of these subscription services generate a lot of plastic waste. I mean, imagine what the world is going to look like when it eventually fills up with plastic razors. And you have to keep paying for it, which gets expensive. I've always had issues with electric razors. The alternative to those options that I've tried to use in the past are these things, safety razors. In theory, they're pretty ideal, but in practice, they're pretty hard to use, and contrary to their name, they don't feel very safe. It's pretty easy to get the angle wrong or nick yourself or something like that. That's where the sponsor for this video comes in. This is the Henson Shaving AL13. This thing is honestly like the perfected version of one of these. It has all the upsides and none of the downsides. I had a very easy time shaving with this. It felt good, and I got a clean shave with no issues, no razor burn. For what I want from a razor, this checks all the boxes, it does a good shave, it's sustainable, you just replace the blades, which are recyclable, there's no plastic in this thing, it really doesn't get clogged, which is amazing, and the way the razor itself is designed to hold the blade makes for a more precise shave, but the high quality design and material means that this razor should also last you basically your entire life. And it might feel like you're paying a little bit more money up front, but over time you're saving a lot of money going this route. We're talking $3 to $5 per year for the replacement blades, depending on how much you shave, and you don't even have to buy those from Henson Shaving. They're not a proprietary blade, you can just use any standard double-edged razor blade. When you buy this thing, a pack of 100 blades are on me. Just add 100 blades to the checkout, use code ThomasFlight, and those blades will be free. Go to the link in the description or on the screen and use code ThomasFlight to pick up your Henson Shaving AL13. Thanks again to Henson Shaving for sponsoring this video.